Good morning and welcome back for our 11 o'clock session entitled Impacting Operational Metrics Through a Digital Supply Chain. And we're honored and fortunate to have with us Victor Baez, who is Senior Director for Strategic Operations at the newly formed Regal Rexnord Corporation, where Victor is responsible for strategic operations and operational excellence activities for global manufacturing sites. Victor is a successful developer of global talent for complex, advanced manufacturing engineering teams in highly matrixed environments, and his accomplishments include implementing integrated operating systems for daily and digitized or digital manufacturing solutions. Prior accomplishments include successfully aligning advanced manufacturing approaches to align to digital Internet of Things and Smart Factory 4.0 rollouts for Regal Rexnord's Aerospace Center of Excellence and new plant startup. Before working at Regal Rexnord, Victor worked for General Electric's Energy Division, where he led global advanced manufacturing efforts in developing and executing new production launches through fully integrated uses of Lean Six Sigma tools and quality approaches. He's also a leader in launching 2 new greenfield factories and brownfield facilities through lean transformation and digital automation. Victor has an MBA in International Business from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, an MS in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, and a BS in Business Technology from University of Wisconsin-Stout. So he is well Wisconsin trained, and his experience will be fantastic for us to hear in terms of implementing and impacting operational metrics through a digitized supply chain and operations effort. So Victor, please take it away.
Jeff, that's awesome. Thank you. Is everything out? Can you hear me okay with the speaker and everything here? Is that good?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. And I'd like to welcome everybody to some of the exciting times around supply chain, right? The daily dynamics, the pressures and everything we all understand, but there are processes out there to help you get better at it. There are processes developing that you can help lead to make the industry better at it. So hopefully you get a little bit of discussion or takeaway on this, but we will go into the why we're here and what this is all about, right? So how to impact your operational metrics through a digital supply chain. There we go. Thank you. All right. So today's industry leaders are faced with new uncertainties around global supply chains and the impact to their manufacturing operations. Defining a successful supply chain requires supply chain leaders to take a sensible step towards creating more flexibility and visibility around a demand-driven and customer-focused supply chain, one in which their traditional metrics and systems may no longer support. In this presentation, we'll cover the foundations of digital supply chain and the underlying impact of the daily operational performance metrics. This session is designed for supply chain executives, but can also serve as an understanding guide for anyone who's working on supply chain study, management, or best business practices. Today's manufacturers need common metrics that are linked and responsive to global supply chain pressures. Executives need supply chains that are responsive and resilient to complex customer demands and digitally enabled in order to satisfy price and demand sensitive customers. To start, let's review the differences between a conventional supply chain and a digital supply chain. Here's one industry definition I think that helps really put these into perspective. Conventional supply chains. In a traditional supply chain, the flow of good involves designing a product, sourcing and procuring the raw materials and parts, making the product, estimating demand, planning how you market the final product, taking orders, arranging logistics and sales channels, and then providing customers with visibility into their orders, all while planning and reacting at each individual progressive step. This is a very linear process with very little look ahead and lacks the ability to identify early enough in the process if there is trouble in the flow, when will it impact operations, and ultimately, when will it be cleared? A digital supply chain, on the other hand, is very different. A digital supply chain is a set of processes that use advanced technologies and better insights into the functions of each stakeholder, along the supply chain concurrently to let each participant make better decisions about the sources of materials they need, the demand for their products, and all of the relationships in between. Digital data with meaningful KPIs support a predictive and prescribing focus at every step. Hurry up and wait, right? So are we still stuck in the 90s? Today's supply chain is all too common, a hurry up and wait process. While this may be the model for many production companies, it can be frustrating to rally the operations over and over again that rush around all day long, only to find that when they get to where they planned, there's critical component shortages. So more hurry up and wait. How do we know where the problem is? If you want to know a good business, how good your business is overall, ask your customer, right? They're the only ones that are going to give you that first level direct feedback. I'm not going to read all through these, but many companies today are in forever firefighting mode and typically fall in one of these categories. The next one to ask is your operations leader. How many times do they have unplanned part shortages or poor quality parts that have impacted a daily production focus, causing work stoppage, rescheduling, purchasing frenzies, or supply or logistics expedites? Which brings us to how do we manage this, right? So in today's presentation, we will cover the foundations of a digital supply chain and the underlying impact on the daily operational performance metrics called KPIs, key process indicators. And finally, provide you with some basic insight on how to begin and develop your digital strategy. On our journey, we will focus on three common operational and supply chain KPIs: cost, service, and inventory. KPI cost. For cost, you must track conversion cost and key supporting productivity metrics such as asset utilization and unplanned downtime in OEE. Conversion costs are those production costs required to convert raw materials into complete products, managing the constant changes in the cost of raw materials along the way. Here's a commonly used metric. A commonly used metric is purchase price variance, right? Which is the difference between planned cost and your actual cost. Overall equipment effectiveness, OEE, is standard for measuring manufacturing productivity. Any unplanned disruptions from the supply chain creates an immediate hit to the operations plan. An OEE score of 100%, industry perfect, means you are manufacturing availability, quality, and performance metrics 100% perfectly. Not an easy number to attain. Best in class usually is around 85%. So you can see that it quickly distracts you from where your focus needs to be and how do you fix the problems that drive down any one of these three leading metrics. For service, lead time and perfect order rate work best, including lead time to process an order, lead time to replenish goods from your suppliers, lead times to manufacture, lead time to pick, pack an order, and finally, lead time to distribute your goods. When we hear lead time, traditionally we think, what is the lead time to get a part from a supplier? But the lead time has to look at the end-to-end components or touch points in the supply chain and identify those and build those into your plan. How much inventory do I have to manage? How much time delays do I have to manage? What is the complexity of my supply chain? And then how do I really have full look ahead end to end? Does one supplier impact the next supplier? These are all of the things that can currently go on instantaneously throughout the supply chain, especially today as we see all the disruptions that are soon becoming, permanent workplaces. Perfect order rate we talked about is tracking perfectly finished orders shipped to the customer on time and in full. This slide shows an example of how to calculate and determine a perfect order rate. Again, here it's a complex process that manages multiple input variables that lead to, how do we bounce and levels that are perfect order rate. Expectations of the customer are always perfect, right? Expectation at the factory or plant level, if we can manage the 90% plus to 95% plus, we're really considered world-class in that expectation. And finally, operational inventory. You need to track availability to demand. This is a metric that a lot of people don't really focus on because they're always doing just in time or what's available on the shelf and are we accurate in there. But availability to demand gives you an insight to where to look for the trouble. Is it particularly one supplier? Is it your internal inventory or warehousing structure? It really helps you start looking at where the issue is, breaking it down, and then managing the metric to make incremental improvements. And then inventory turn ratio is the number of times a company sells and replaces its stock in a set period, usually measured and tracked monthly, but rolled up for your year. Again, best in class, you're looking at the more inventory turns, it means the more effective you are in buying and selling and replenishing your inventory rolls. Having data-driven KPIs that are aligned with operations leaders and supply chain teams and operations teams can be, so that your operations teams can be better armed and aligned to make meaningful, data-driven business decisions. Most times in a visual daily management process, these metrics are disconnected from really where the source of truth is. Is your manufacturing system, is your supply chain system providing the data, or do you rely on your operation or supply chain leads to update the data manually and then be slow to react or have outdated data by the time it really gets to the point of impact? So as we digitize and as we learn to work these systems together, this data will then allow us to drive better business decisions faster throughout the organization. So question, why should you create a supply chain that is digitally enabled? After all, supply chain management is as basic as and old as Henry Ford's assembly lines, right? So we must be doing something right along the way. The answer is yes, we have been, but it's not good enough. And we can see with the global impact and the dynamics of customer requests and requirements that we need to do something different. And the answer to that is end-to-end control. Optimizing your supply chain and operations to meet customers' needs is the goal of every business manager. Developing a digital supply chain in manufacturing is a crucial activity for those juggling numerous variables from their customers, including more customization, shorter product cycles, and even faster innovation cycles. It bridges the gaps that have isolated manufacturing operations by providing full visibility into the company's needs and challenges. By delivering valuable information along all stops within a digitally networked system in real time, Industry 4.0 technologies are helping manufacturers plan and execute operations for the best use and needs of their customer. So control and high visibility leads to maximizing outputs and results. Tell me, which of these are most attractive to your senior executive teams? Hopefully you're saying all of them. These are incremental improvements to be gained as you look at where are the first places to focus on digitizing, how fast do we get there, and which area needs the most support. But ultimately, these 4 areas will increase and respond to your digital focus. Head spinning yet? So where do we start? Today's digital world is just a maze of information, internet, salespeople, software systems, solutions, all promising to get you to the end result of your digital journey. But to start, really, here are some common drivers conceptually and common elements that any digital system should have. Agility, to easily respond to opportunities and problems facing the operational side of the business. Integration of supply chain stakeholders. In its basic structure, a supply chain is made up of a company, their suppliers, and the customers of that company. Real-time performance and visibility, such that you can see and access information across the system when and where you need it, and it can quickly be integrated across the organization to support, again, your decision-making processes. Global web-based connectivity. Utilizing web-based applications known as ESCM, supply chain management, to satisfy customer requirements in the most practical way and in real time. Scalability and flexibility. especially today. We are scaling so fast and we are flexing so fast to changing dynamics, market pressures, supply chain pressures, customer pressures, enabling responsiveness to achieve a higher level of service delivery and faster product configuration. And finally, smart processes to achieve cost targets, cost reduction, and improve overall operations efficiencies. It's not enough to get you there. It's what are you doing to manage the changes and how do you make it better once you are there. Having a digital supply chain will result in a two-way virtual environment that reflects and informs the physical environment and then tracks and records digital data for further analysis and optimization, otherwise known as big data. So what's the next step? Designing your digital supply chain through a well-balanced technology roadmap. But don't go foolishly rushing around, learning, planning, and everything just to bring in digital technology. It's not a buzzword. Digital technology is a process and it's a strategy that aligns with your technology moves. It only takes one weak link that can lead to delays and costly issues, resulting in dissatisfied customers, potentially huge losses of profit, and clearly loss of business. A major part of this technology roadmap planning process involves developing a common set of metrics that we're speaking about with operations that will quickly monitor the efficiency and quality of your supply chain. Disruptive technologies. This is the whole focus around digital and why we're disrupting what we do today and how it's going to help us through this disruption. So disruption is not a bad process. It really shakes the dust out and asks you to reevaluate where you are, what your business is doing, and are you leading the industry or are you following? Your technology roadmap and planning process must involve having a clear understanding of one, where you are, two, where you want to go, and three, how you're going to get there. Along the way, you'll need to measure success by developing and linking these KPI metrics with operations that will incrementally and quickly monitor the quality and efficiency of your new digital supply chain. Without those incremental changes or those incremental signals, you will continue down the road without knowing you have a problem again until it's too late. The impact of digital is we know right away, we can trend where it's going, and we can fix it well ahead of it becoming an issue or disruptor in our supply chain. So question, why inject disruptive digital technologies into a well-established manufacturing organization with proven business models? Think about it. Ask yourself, are you okay being first to be second? Right? Somebody is leading the industry. Either you're going to be a leader or you're going to be a follower. You may even be insignificant and bring little competitive advantage to your marketplace by following the leaders. Small thinking will only produce incrementally small results. So back to our maze, where do we begin? You begin by asking the tough questions in the beginning so you develop a clear and manageable plan. Do you really understand how operations are running today, including all your hidden factory and rework? What are your system capabilities and what processes are currently being followed? What are the regulatory and compliance impacts? What is our user understanding of our systems? Do we have solid enterprise level IT architecture? What level of standardization do we currently have in our work and operational processes? How well does your business understand digital and the value it can provide? And most importantly, does senior management support the vision and the digital team process? Without the leadership developed top down, you won't get the bottom up building of this. So this will take everybody, pressure from top, bottom, left, and right, to be on board with digital mapping. The impact and the touch points go throughout your organization in unstandard ways that you probably haven't calculated in current manual or standard daily management processes. Everybody will have opportunity for input to create accurate data from your first point operator touch point to your supply chain to suppliers that are outside of your supply chain using second source supplying. So that visibility will drive and pull us all together, but it's not going to be easy. Focus on your benefits. Decisions and risk assessments. You have to do the homework and the hard work up front. With big data decisions making processes, big data decision making processes can be improved and risk assessments made easier. Process optimization. More detailed analysis of manufacturing data can contribute to optimized business processes and reduce costs. Profitability. Sales and requirements planning through digital-driven processes guarantees delivery capability, prevents lost revenue, and thus increases profitability. And pricing. Digital data analysis provide the option to adapt prices to the current market situation in real time. Customer-focused potential exploitation. Big data analysis makes it easier to align with the specific characteristics of customers and to detect opportunity gaps in the rapidly changing global marketplace. With these benefits, you have to decide which one is going to make the biggest impact to your business. Am I just improving operations? Am I managing this to a technology model that's going to increase my growth? Am I going to really make the optimization at the operations and supply chain level that drive to customer engagement and customer satisfaction scores increasing? Again, focusing on disruptive changes and how you manage them through your process. Along the way, you need to keep a lean focus for control at every single stage gate. It is better to release a product late that is working as designed than to constantly be fixing a poor design forever. Following a lean plan, do, check, act cycle will help to keep the project balanced and aligned to your design. And yes, there's going to be details that will change. You're going to have plan pivots, but they will ultimately be focused pivots and plan changes that will incrementally result in a stronger, well-running digital supply chain rollout. Along the way in keeping the lean, lay out a timeline that can effectively manage. Remember, depending upon your starting point, this will also involve focus and new training from top to bottom, front office, all the way through your operational employees. These are digital touch points that we talked about briefly earlier. Your operators will have different inputs. There will be system inputs instead of manual hardboard inputs. There will be inputs that affect and impact right away what is going on in operations, what you're expecting next, and what you just completed. Everybody will have to go through this training and refocus to implement and manage these new integrated digital technologies. With all this focus and planning, finally, you'll have the details of your digital detailed plan, right? So you will know clearly what your targets are, what impact you're going to have, how to measure that impact, and more importantly, is it giving you the ROI of all of your time and dollar expenses that are driving you to your technology growth. Properly designed and with full executive and business team support, it will look like a brand new pair of running shoes. Keen knowledge and full visibility around all the complexity in your system, exposing gaps in your current supply chain model, operations model, and more importantly, providing the incremental steps that are required to become digitally world-class. Here you can look at some of the touch points where digital impacts occur, where data is derived from, and the flow of data as it flows through not only your supply chain, through your operations, but ultimately out through to your customers. Digital disruption will impact each of your businesses in different ways, And the impact and degree, speed of change, amount of change needed, all this will help you understand, are your goals focused? Are they achievable? And then how do you recalibrate the steps you take? When you look at the amount of change I'm doing, is it incrementally big? Is it a start from 0 and end at 100, or are you already somewhere in that journey? Pace of change, what's driving your pace of change? Is it your customer market? Is your operations efficient? Is your supply chain efficient? As you build your roadmap out incrementally, both in the amount of change and the speed of change will come to light and develop with you your technical roadmap, the time pace to get there, 0 years, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year increments, to say it's constantly evolving. But these are the things that we must focus on first. Don't try to boil the ocean. This is going to take time and it's going to take discipline. Since a digital organization depends on newer technologies and connected systems, there will be areas of risk that have to be clearly and early identified and then managed through a solid risk mitigation plan. Plan to control them. Some common risks and mitigations are shown here. Smart systems and that drive connected equipment can become corrupt or disconnected. How do you focus on? Where do you focus on? Make sure your cybersecurity plan is intact. Make sure your digital blueprint, your schematic of how things should work, is up to date. Any changes have to be updated incrementally on your blueprint, or you'll become further and further away and then managing systems that are out of date. Your employee skill sets available, understanding IT, OT processes. It's a new and developing area for our young engineers coming out of school. We're not just mechanical engineers or industrial engineers anymore. Understanding IT, the connections to OT, and then what should and doesn't happen, and then how to fix it, right? So additional training at the university level, additional training at your workforce level. Make sure you have solid plans for onboarding. There's a lot of new activity and new information that you don't have built into your training plans today that will have to be reevaluated and make sure that they're kept up to date. Capital expenditures. Yes, there's going to be fluctuations and there's going to be misses. You have to plan for a solid, sound budget to get you to your incremental steps. But you have to know along the way, there's going to be things that you didn't know about your systems or processes that are going to incrementally cost you more money. Make sure that your executive team has that buy-in. Make sure you've budgeted accordingly for those incremental misses and that it doesn't derail or mothball your project once you get it started. And executive commitment drift, right? If we're not seeing impact immediately, everybody wants to shift gears. This is a long-term fix. This isn't going to be an overnight flip the switch. We have strategic plans that are short-term. How do we get something in front of us today that's going to give us incremental improvements, build momentum, build engagement, but also what is the long-term strategic plan? How well does it tie into your 5-year business model? And how well and how focused will your executive team stay along that journey with you? Okay, so enough talk, right? You need to go out there and explore. There are plenty of friendly manufacturers for you to engage with that are already somewhere in this journey, whether they're leading the industry, whether they're just starting out, or somewhere in between. But I found in my career, in my industry, and in the businesses that I've been with, the most information I get is not from your sales, software sales departments, right? Those are guys, they will sell you anything, they will promise you everything. But manufacturers today are much more inclined, especially non-competitive areas, to show you and walk you through their journey. In fact, most of them showcase it because it's an exciting time and it helps them learn things that they may not be thinking of from different areas or different avenues. So more eyes, the better. But there are plenty of manufacturers out there that will take you through that journey with them so you can help build your plan. Blockchain. So we can't talk about digital without hitting blockchain. It's a fast developing technology, but really not one that I can speak to yet. I know that we are slowly exploring tying this into the connected industry. But I do want you to know that it is a major part of developing digitally integrated systems. In general, blockchain is a system of recording information in a way that makes it very difficult or impossible to change, hack, or cheating the system. A blockchain is essentially a digital ledger that transactions that is distributed and duplicated across the entire network of computer systems on that blockchain. Each block in the chain contains a number of transactions, so that every time a new transaction occurs on the blockchain, a record of that transaction is added to each participant's ledger. The centralized database is managed by multiple participants and is known as distributed ledger technology. Again, this is a technology that is there, it's readily available, but don't bite off more than you can chew. So this is a separate initiative all by itself. How do I integrate it? Certainly it's a key and critical part of our supply chain. Vendors or suppliers typically aren't ready at the same pace you are. So when you design or advance or look for your technology, make sure that it's not just short-sighted or focused on what you can do or what you want. You have an entire supply chain to manage, and everybody along the way has to become a player. Either they're in or they're out. And part of the risk management is making sure that your suppliers are able to keep up the technology requirements that you're building into your system. So when you look all the way, look end to end and operationally, look under the rug, see where these blockages or this disruptions to your plan may occur. Blockchain, I just wanted to hit on because it is a critical area. So concluding, in this is just a brief introduction, right, to the understanding and benefits of your digital supply chain. Having a plan, knowing what KPIs to manage will provide you with the insight to start looking at your businesses in a new way. Remember, there are barriers, challenges, and hurdles to overcome in order to bring technology advancements to your company. There is no easy button or single solution, and be very, very wary of those that are promoting such solutions, because they will tie in and tie you down and lose money and lose executive focus and control if you go down that road. There will always be compromise between inventory, cost, and delivery to meet your customers' needs. My suggestion is to start with one goal: on-time delivery in full. Focus on the tools and the techniques that will give your business the best outcome, such that your customers get what they want, when they want it, and in the quantity they need every time. That brings us to the conclusion here. I appreciate your time listening to me. I know that this did not go the full hour, but there's many of these areas that can branch off and become separate subjects all by themselves. So my focus here is to give you an overview of digital supply chain, but primarily how do we link that back to a fully integrated operations management system, which then is really listening to and tied into the heartbeat of the organization. Can we produce it when we need to produce it? And where along the supply chain do we have gaps or concerns? So I'm open to any questions. I'm not sure if any came in. I certainly appreciate your time in joining us today.
Victor, we don't have any questions yet, but I actually had one. Regal Rexnord is now, you're at a very unique point in the now merged company history. Maybe you can give me or give the listeners here a perspective in what you've shared with us, this digitization and improvement journey. Were there one, two, or three tougher challenges for the old Rexnord Corporation and organization? And then I'd like to kind of say, has the Regal Rexnord merger now kind of changed those opportunities or challenges for you? Without sharing the family jewels or too much confidential or proprietary information, where were the two or three toughest challenges at Rexnord as you were on this journey? And has the Regal Rexnord merger now changed those challenges for you?
Sure. Great question. Let me actually take it one step backwards, Jeff. Prior to joining Rexnord, I was with GE, and GE had a huge appetite for their digital journey. They were going to be the leaders, and to many degrees, they are the leaders in digital technologies and software platforms and such. And what I learned there was the bite was too big. We were challenged with an enormous amount of new technologies and integration that our industry wasn't quite ready for. And I mean, our industry, our manufacturing sites had their degree of difficulty, but that supply chain connectivity that we talk about was not ready at all several years back. And so that really disrupted how fast or what the pace was that we could do it, because while we can get better internally, we came to that screeching hold, stop and wait activity because the rest of the supply chain wasn't ready. My journey over to Rexnord provided me the opportunity to engage with one of our aerospace divisions and reformat and restructure a digital focus, but it was more concentrated, right? So in the aerospace industry, being AS 9100 and ITAR compliant, paperwork is king, and having that digital fingerprint became our core focus. We quickly learned that, not printing on paper doesn't mean you have the data accurate, right? So we wanted to get rid of the reams and reams of paper and save the tree industry, but we were nowhere near ready to tie that back into where all the data came from. So we actually went into it with a very forward-thinking plan, but had to take these step back, step sideways to really bring the digital touch points to where all the data was coming from, and could we effectively capture it. So along the journey, instead of going from A to Z, our incremental steps brought us from capturing data where we could, using paper where we had to, and ultimately continuous improvement, driving where we could, flush out the next incremental steps. And, now bringing, fast forward to the Regal Rexnord merger, which we just completed here in the beginning of October. The new set of challenges is twofold, right? It's the business leadership engagement. We've got that blended view right now coming at us, which is working quite well. We've got a very solid, clear synergy plan. But in our case of how do we make things smarter, faster, we are now working on two different manufacturing operation systems, which is an enormous difference in how you develop and define and are able to roll out your digital strategies. So it's a roadblock. Again, we've got to pivot, but it's not a stoppage, right? So we're reemerging or reevaluating the decision, the speed of where we're going to change and what we're going to change. But now we have to do it in an environment with two different eyesights, and we're going to learn more along the way. And that's what the whole push of digital industry is learning more along the way. And we're bringing a lot more people into it. We've got the horsepower of two huge successful business organizations working together. And, that information, as I mentioned about go out and see your non-compete manufacturers where they are in their journey, has brought a whole new subset of information to us, because we are competing manufacturers that joined as one. So, but great question. And yes, it's a journey. We're moving.
Thanks for answering that, Victor. And you get kudos from me as a fellow Lean Six Sigma black belt. I love whenever a supply chain presentation has a Deming reference and PDCA in it. So that this is never a smooth journey, that there's oftentimes two steps forward, one step back. We do have another question. Most companies don't do a good job with the information they already have. I often hear from companies that went down the big data journey saying we're data rich but information poor, and they don't even use small data well. How can or will digital supply chain implementers not fall into this trap?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for asking that. One part of that I didn't include in this, because typically when I do more of a digital data focus and how do you manage it, cloud data management and things like that, there are new terms right now for volumes of data that I never even heard of before, zettabytes and exabytes and all these things that are incrementally coming at us. And if you look at the incremental amount of data from 2021 to 2025, you can't even put your head around what that number really means for data accumulation and what do you do with data, right? So the first place to start there is, do you have a solid historian, right? Is your system right now at a point where that data, while you're collecting enormous amounts of data, is at least in a structured historian-based model? That's the start point. How do you synthesize it? How do you regenerate it to points of use is really where you need to understand where is the data coming from, how accurate is the data, and why do I need to use it? Too many times we get reports that 80% of them are meaningless. And, I look at my iPhone and I use about 4 functions on it, but this thing is a small, microcomputer here, right? And same thing with data. Data is cheap, as they say, right? Storage of data as we get to cloud-based storage and management is very much more manageable than it was even 5 years ago. We look at, then when we look at, okay, now I have this data, how do I break it down to where I need? You start with your digital roadmap. What am I trying to fix? What data is going to help me get to that solution? And once I have that data, how do I manage it for incremental improvements, which goes back to, our whole lean KPI focus around the data is telling me something. Am I listening, right? And then you can determine real quick, is the data accurate or is my processing accurate? And which one am I going to fix? So re-siloing your data decisions is taking that enormous amount of data. Data analytics is big. There's softwares out there that'll promise you the world in data analytics and developing your own algorithms about what I need, what I don't need. But I caution you on ever-changing technologies that don't support small level management of that technology, because it's going to change. And if it's a very complex system to control the data, it is going to become that reams of data you don't use. So identify where your data is coming from, identify if it's accurate, and then just pull from it the one or two areas that are really going to drive your decisions along your technology roadmap. You'll soon find out, do I have enough data? Do I have the wrong data? Or do I need to look in different areas for my data?
Great, thank you. Great answer. Are there any other questions for Victor? Second question, Victor. We heard in the beginning of the talk, KPIs are 85 to 95% as being world-class. That probably depends on the KPI metric. When selling the ideas of TQM Six Sigma going back 20 years, such percentages would have been viewed as poor. Are TQM Six Sigma goals of few errors per million not applicable, or goals with supply chain KPIs on that level of 6-7 Sigma performance?
Certainly we all want 100%, right? But we got to live in the real world. So target goals years ago, in my experience, prior to everything becoming fast and available and ready, weren't necessarily driven from accurate data. So it's easier to show with a smaller amount of data what those targets were, and we had higher target bars. The 85% I referenced to was OEE. So when you look at the complexity of OEE around 100% quality, 100% availability, 100% of productivity, we do not run in a 95% world. We are lucky at most and best if you really do a clear analysis of your business, you're probably running around a 70% if you're feeling good that day. So to move the needle from 70% to 85% against those three metrics and everything they touch is a very, very difficult challenge. Not negating, our Toyota productive model and what our goal is and then how we can get there. But I challenge you to really know all of the inputs to those three simple categories, and then as you multiply them across each other, what your real number is, and is it sustainable, right? We can all hit 90% one day, everything's running great and everything else, but tomorrow that machine breaks down and the impact to your OEE is immediately felt. Disruptions in your supply chain. One piece isn't where it's supposed to be, whether it's a consumable piece, a production piece that's required for the product build, or anything else in there that is going to redirect or change your plan, because too often a reschedule is considered as part of our original metrics, and we hit the reschedule well, but really the impact to binary was like on time every time. No, if I have to reschedule, that's a negative, right?
Right, to miss.
But there's a lot going into it. I'm not going to challenge the number of world class, but I will challenge how we get the data and running to a true world class versus a visionary world class.
And it strikes me that even that very discussion within the organization has merit, because you're starting to look deeper at the data to turn it into information, and you're asking better questions.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Are there any additional questions? Great. I'm going to give it another 5 or 10 seconds, but Victor, thank you for not only for sharing this, the complexities and considerations, and the reference points of KPIs around trying to make this digitization journey, but sharing some of maybe the pains and successes that Rexnord and now Regal Rexnord will take in their future journeys. We thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your time this morning to share that important story.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Just an upcoming commercial for our noon virtual tour of the Connected Systems Institute's Advanced Manufacturing Lab, if you have interest in that. That will be starting in about 15 minutes at noon. I also want to encourage you to join us at 1 o'clock when Bill Stewart from Kohler Kitchen and Bath is going to be talking about the use of agile software methods as applied to supply chain to drive improvement. That should be an interesting discussion at 1 o'clock. Thank you again, Victor, for your sharing and your story, and we will see you all in our next session. Thank you all and have a great day.